has been conducting a pain points poll to identify the challenges or the pain points that our military, veteran, National Guard, Reserve, and civilian families are facing as a result of COVID-19. We are using this data to directly influence policy and advocacy efforts. As of our 10th week of polling, we've had close to 7,500 respondents. These respondents, as you can see on this slide, have come from all across the country, all across the branches of service, and many types of military affiliation. Most recently, 70% of our sample in week 10 were active duty Navy, spouses or service member, an interesting evolution in the pain points polling. One thing that I would like to highlight specifically as it's relevant to today's conversation is to shine a bit of a spotlight on the pain points polling results as it relates to unmet education needs. So you can see here that military families are extremely concerned about education issues. 41% of military family respondents report that educational services for children is a top 3 need for their family during COVID, up from 24% just 5 weeks ago in our week 5 polling. And for the first time in the 10 weeks of polling, it's the top unmet community need in this past week. So spotlighting these trends even further, we asked families what their top 5 education-related concerns were. And you can see those results on the slide, but I'd like to tee them up now. So 70% of military family respondents said that addressing content gaps in grade level standards is an unmet need and an education concern. 34% of military family respondents said IEP compliance, including progress and or completion of goals and skill maintenance and practice, is a top 5 concern. 25% said collecting school records and belongings is a concern. 19% said enrolling in summer learning programs at their current location is. And finally, 14% said that secondary course credit, including how secondary course credit will be assigned by semester and or for full year courses, is a concern. So you may see your own family's situation or concerns in these trends, and that's why we've convened this discussion today. And as I mentioned at the start, we have a terrific group of individuals who are going to provide insights on resources and trends and potential strategies to deal with both. But before we get to that, I want to acknowledge that you may have many questions for today's speakers. If you have a question, please submit it through the chat page on the forum. Our participants and our speakers will do their best to field as many of these questions as possible. Throughout the course of the conversation, I'll be teeing these questions up as appropriate. And any questions that we do not get to today will be downloaded by our team, and we will work to get those answers posted, answers to those questions posted and get them up on the CMSI website as soon as possible. So please be patient as we're navigating through that information, and it's a frequently changing set of circumstances and situations, and we want to make sure that we provide you with the most up-to-date and accurate answers. So with all of that said, I'd like to turn it over to this wonderful panel that I keep mentioning and shift to the discussion part of our town hall. I am very excited to introduce our moderator for this panel. Becky Porter is the president and CEO of the Military Child Education Coalition, and herself a retired colonel with decades of active duty service, all of which she'll be bringing into this discussion and leading our terrific group of panels. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Becky to lead our discussion.
Thank you, Spencer. I want to make sure that everybody can see and hear me first. Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to moderate this panel. We've really got a great collection, as you can see, of subject matter experts here. And what we plan to do today is address the concerns that you're expressing in the pain points poll, answer any questions that we get online during this broadcast, And if there are some questions that require us to do more research, we'll get back to you on those as well. In order to give us more time for questions and answers, what I'd like to do is I'll just go ahead and introduce all of our panelists at the beginning, and then we'll get into the questions. If we have some time at the end, then I'll give the panelists some additional time to cover anything that we didn't get to, but they think that you might want to know. And like I said, if there are questions that require us to do some more research before we can give you a definitive answer, we'll get back to you on that as well. Spencer will also be providing some resources that all of these organizations have provided that can help you as you move forward into the next school year. So let me get started on the introductions. I'll start with Pamela Brim, who grew up PCSing every few years, like many of you who are tuned in today. She's the Senior Director of Tutor.com's Military and Government Programs. And for those of you who don't know about Tutor.com, since it was founded in 1998, it's delivered almost 19 million one-to-one online tutoring and homework help sessions to students. The company has more than 3,000 vetted tutors who provide learning support that's available on demand 24/7 in more than 100 academic test preparation subjects. Their mission is to help all learners reach their full potential through personalized, one-to-one expert instruction. And since 2009, Tutor.com has provided online tutoring to military families around the world through its DoD-funded program, Tutor.com for U.S. military families. Welcome, Pam. Our next panelist is Patty Ewan, who is at the Department of Defense Education Activity, DoDEA. She started there nearly 7 years ago and came from the Maryland Department of Education, where she was the project manager for the first in the nation early childhood developmental screening project. She started in DoDEA as the College and Career Administration to implement standards-based education system. And once that was underway, she moved to the Partnership Division, where she supports DoDEA's and the Partnership Division's mission by advising on policy, operations, practice, grant funding, pre-K through grade 12 student transitions, and military and non-military partnerships. Thanks for joining us today, Patty. The next panelist I'd like to introduce is Cherise Imai. She's the Executive Director for the Military Interstate Children's Compact Commission. You may have heard it called MIC3 or MIC3. She's got over 20 years of experience in the field of programs, policy, and marketing, and was previously the military liaison for the Hawaii State Department of Education. For those of you unfamiliar, the Interstate Compact was developed by federal, state, and local officials, as well as national stakeholder organizations representing education groups and military families to address some of the educational challenges of transitioning military children. Those challenges include eligibility, enrollment, placement, and graduation. And we'll let Cherise get into more of those details later on. Thanks for joining us, Cherise. Carrie Gu is from Great Schools, and she's the Vice President there for External Affairs. It's the leading national nonprofit that empowers parents to unlock educational opportunities for their children. They provide school information and ratings for all public district and charter schools in the United States to help parents understand various aspects of school quality, whether they are moving and choosing schools or working in their community to improve schools. During COVID-19 related school closures, Great Schools has developed grade level academic toolkits to help keep your child on track, and they've curated other partner resources to support the needs of all of their families. And I just have to put in a plug with Great Schools. We've partnered with them at MSEC for our School Quest program, and really enjoying that partnership as well. So thanks for joining us today, Carrie. Our next panelist is Michelle Norman. She's the 2019 AFI Navy Spouse of the Year and executive and co-founder of Partners in Promise. It's an advocacy group that's focused on improving access to education for military children who have special needs. Partners in Promise was founded by 4 military mothers of special needs children who shared similar stories of emotional, educational, and legal challenges. Today, Partners in Promise serves as a liaison between EFMP military families, military service organizations, and public officials. Their emphasis is on removing educational hurdles placed before military families with exceptional needs children. And finally, but not least of all, Marcus Lingenfelter is joining us as the Senior Vice President in Edmentum, a full K-12 digital curriculum, assessment, and instruction capabilities provider to more than 8,000 school systems in the United States. Edmentum was originally known as Plato Learning and is the direct result of a 1960s DoD NSF-funded research project at the University of Illinois. Marcus is no stranger to supporting military-connected schools, having served as Senior Vice President at the National Math and Science Initiative, deploying DoD-funded STEM education programs to hundreds of heavily impacted military communities around the country. I think you'll agree with me that we've got a really great panel of experts with us today. And so without any further delay, I'm going to get into asking them some questions. Spencer's going to be monitoring the chat box to let us know other questions that come in while we're talking. But I'm going to start first with a question for Pam Brim from Tutor.com. They work with, Pam, Tutor.com works with thousands of students across all grades every day. What trends with learning and homework have you seen since this spring when schools across the country started to either close or drastically alter how they deliver instruction?
Thank you for the question, Becky, and thank you for the kind introduction. We're honored to be here. Thank you to the CMSI panel and organizers. That's a great question. So Tutor.com, as you pointed out, has been around for about 20 years. We've delivered 19 million online tutoring sessions. And the last few months have been unprecedented, to say the least. So it's a whole new world, as an animated movie character sings. And what we're finding is about a 30% increase in demand for our online tutoring services. This demand is coming from certainly parents and students, but also from our existing clients, such as the Department of Defense and school districts around the country. There is a strong focus on online education. There's a strong focus on helping students who might be feeling like they are having gaps in their education because of the circumstances. What we are seeing in terms of tutoring sessions is that students are expressing a lot of concern around not having access to their teachers as they might normally. There's concern from parents and also students who are being very honest in their feedback that mom or dad or the other adult in their family might not be prepared to be full-time educators. And there's a lot of stress around that. And as we all know, stress impedes learning. So if you are not a subject matter expert or you don't have the content knowledge to be that subject matter expert for your student, there's going to be a lot of stress for everyone in the family. The demand that we're seeing is across the board. It's with the K-12 students, but also college students. It's with everybody right now. We are very prepared to support that. The notion of online academic support is not new to us. We've been doing it for a very long time. So we are in a position, and we feel very, very honored that people are trusting us to help them reduce their stress and also improve their academic skills. In addition to that, people are asking for additional help. Maybe they're not getting the curriculum advice, they're not getting the lessons from their schools as they had expected they might. So our tutors are also in a position to give them parallel problems, suggest other resources. People are looking for resources, and we're happy that they're coming to us for that help.
That's great. That's great. Thanks, Pam. I think that probably we could go on for a long time just talking about those things, but it makes me think, and I'd like to ask Patty Ewan to answer this next question that is kind of a dovetail to what Pam just told us. So thinking about the resources for parents, Patty, what practical advice or tips would you offer to military-connected families who are frankly exhausted from this learning at home, and we call it a hybrid model, but a lot of parents, like Pam noted, either don't feel equipped or just frankly exhausted. So beyond the new appreciation that we all have for educators, what tips can you offer to our military families?
Of course. Thank you, Becky. It's nice to see you and everyone else. So there's a lot to think about, and yes, parents are exhausted. I am enjoying some of the stories that I'm hearing, but also behind all of that humor is just the feeling that how much more can I do? Because most parents are also at home trying to maintain a school program while also running their homes and their own jobs and meeting their responsibilities and whistle a happy tune all at the same time, and it's a lot. So first of all, I'd like to encourage parents to kind of hit the pause button and ask yourself, what are my goals right now for my student? We all know that students have unfinished learning from this school year 19 to 20, and there are learning gaps. Not all of the content will be there. However, I would also remind you that teachers do this every day. When your students go back to school in September, there's never been a class that I've ever seen where every student has been in the same place with all of the content at the same time. So doing your best is enough. So think about what your goals are for your student and where you want to take them, and think about it in chunks of time, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, not necessarily in day to day. Step back a little bit and give it a little bit of an arc. To that notion, the schedule is your friend. It is a good idea to have a schedule. And if you think about schedules, again, chunks of time, morning routine, somewhere between 7 and 9 a.m., all of the students in your household need to be up, dressed, fed, bathed, hair combed, and ready to start the day. And that's a good idea for teenagers as well, because we all do have to adhere to bus schedules and starting and stop times when this ends. For children 8 and under, around 3rd grade and under, the parent may want to make the schedule based on the needs of all the students in the household and their work demands. For students who are 4th grade to 7th and 8th grade, you may want to do it together so that those non-negotiables are scheduled, but they have a little bit more independence, because that's, natural part of their development. And then for high school students, generally speaking, they can make their own schedules as long as you set some minimums. And those minimums would be the writing and the reading and the math time. The other thing that I would also say about the schedule is school ends. We send your child home at the end of the school day, and we send your child home at the end of the year. So my lights just went off. So if you decide to go in this path, remember that most school systems take a 3-week break between the end of school and the start of summer learning. And also remember that there is an end to the day where they come home and they do their regular routines. Second thing to think about in the context of these goals is pace. In about a 6 and a 6.5 hour school day, we do about 3 hours of direct instruction. We don't hit all day long, so it's okay. And also, we look at that pacing. We don't introduce all the new concepts at the same time. We don't do new science, new history, new writing expectations, new digital learning all at the same time. So think about back to those goals and what that pace might look like. Include some of those social emotional things. If you have a youngster who is becoming very dependent on you, 8 years and younger, 3 oral directions, 3 tasks they have to complete without your help. Sometime this morning, I want you to fold the socks, make your bed, and empty the dishwasher. That's 3 things without you being near them, prompting, helping, or support. For 9 to 14-year-olds who are also struggling to feel their feelings, let them use the jokes, the riddles, the Mad Libs, some of those music and magazines. Let them express themselves with creation boards or paint boards. Let them redesign their bedrooms. There's a lot of geometry in redesigning a bedroom. So think about how that can all be done in different ways. And for deans, you have to really think about what their personality is selecting and choosing and how you can bring that into your house. And the last couple of things that I would talk about is in terms of content. Reading cannot be overemphasized. From K to 5, we say kids learn to read. From grade 6 to 12, we talk about read to learn. And a lot of times when students become independent readers, we stop reading aloud to them. But to continue read alouds with even your high school students can be very beneficial, especially in your nonfiction genres. Math games do count as math time. We play math games in the classroom all the time. There are at least 100 games you can play with one deck of cards. So we're not asking for a big investment, just that you keep going with it. And also keep that family fitness going and self-care bingo and all of those other kinds of things that are all part of the learning process of sharing and taking turns in self-expression that don't necessarily say you have to open a science lab in your home. Because if every student went back to school in September able to be independent and focused, your teachers would be really, really happy. So think about it that way.
That's great. Thanks, Patty. Those are some really good tips. And I think the ideas that you had and that you presented really, I think are important for parents to acknowledge and just sit with the success that they've had in the last few months and kind of give themselves a pat on the back, because for many of us, we didn't start out being educators, and so this is a new environment for us, and you're probably doing a way better job than you realize. Going on though, yeah, definitely. I'm thinking though now, like for Carrie Gu from great schools, it may be that some parents are thinking, okay, I've made it through the spring. Now, what can I do through the summer to prepare my child for the next school year? Or what if I'm worried that they're going to have to catch up when they get to the next place? Carrie, what would you offer parents in that regard?
Sure. Thanks, Becky. And thanks for the shout out during the intro. We love working with MCAC and are very proud to be able to help serve military families. We know they move around a lot and look to us for resources, and we're happy that we can be there for them. So I'm happy to be here on the call with you today. So yeah, looking at the summer, you know, we've heard a lot from parents who are coming to our site and from the research that we see with other organizations that are working directly with parents. Is one thing is parents are more connected to their child's learning than ever before. They've had to become teachers or facilitators of learning in their own household. I know that very well. I have a college student, a high school student, a middle schooler, and an elementary schooler. So I call it super school at our house. And it has been really eye-opening. So, but as you go into summer, you know, every year we hear about what's called the summer slide, where kids, you know, stop learning at school, they take some time off, and then they need to catch up again when they go back into school, and in the fall. And so we have that now compounded with what's been called the COVID slide, and where kids may be even getting further behind. Now, many schools have been providing excellent learning and pivoting on a dime and innovating, but there inevitably are going to be things that kids have missed during the instruction time, being curtailed during online learning. So it's good to really start to get a sense of where your child is and what your child might have missed. And to do that, there are a couple ways you can do that. One is if school isn't already out and you still have an opportunity to talk with your teacher, get a sense from the teacher. You know, what should my child be working on this summer? What weren't you able to cover in X grade that you normally would that maybe I should keep looking at? On greatschools.org, we've created a COVID school closure learning landing page where you can find a lot of resources, including toolkits for each grade. But one of the great new resources we have right now is an article on the top of that page. So if you go to greatschools.org, you'll see the coronavirus resources link. And the article is what your child should have learned in grades K through 8. We don't have the high school right now, but in grades K through 8. So you can check out for each grade, what are the key skills your child should have learned for that grade? And that's a great starting point. Learning Heroes is another great organization we work with regularly, and they have what's called a readiness check. So it's an interactive, fun tool on their site on bealearninghero.org, where you can sit with your child and take kind of a little assessment. and see where your child is and what grade level and what your child might want to be working on over the summer. So those are a couple of places where you can go to kind of figure out like where are we right now. And then as you go into the summer and think about what do you want to do, we know from our polling on our site that parents really want to keep their children learning over the summer. Almost half of parents say that they will do some summer learning this summer to make sure their child is ready for next year. And so there are materials and lots of resources. I would suggest try to find resources that are designed for parents. There are a lot of resources that are designed for educators that have been opened up, and some of those resources are very hard to navigate, and some of them have and are doing better and better at kind of redesigning their resources for parents to use that are more parent friendly. So there are a lot of great resources out there at great schools. Starting on June 20th, you can come to that same landing page I think you'll send out after as a resource, where you can find our summer kind of learning calendars that link to worksheets and all at grade level, kind of targeted for your child and where they are, but also book lists, curated book lists that help you, find, my child's very into nature right now, and he's a third grader, and how can we go out and take a look at nature and then read about nature and come home? As Patty said, reading throughout the summer is really, really critical. So those book lists are really wonderful. Common Sense Media has wonderful book lists as well, I would say. And then are there learning programs that are happening during the summer online? So Khan Academy, for example, is about to launch a free summer learning camp. They call it Camp Khan, but it's more of an academic camp. So where we don't have kind of our regular camps or summer activities, being able to find those resources where kids can go to an online camp for a little part of the day, maybe not your whole day. You don't want your child to be in front of the screen all the time, but there are ways to kind of put structure in your day and add that learning with those outside resources. So Camp Khan, there's another great free online camp called Camp Kinda, Kinda, which I love because it's a little less academic and more fun, but it helps your child kind of explore a passion and different interests, and it's very creative. So there's lots of fun places to go. And then I would also just start, as you think about next year and what school is going to look like next year, we don't know, right? So have conversations with other parents in your community. If you can, try to talk to the education leaders in your community and tell them what you want and what will be good for you and parents in terms of restarting school for your kids. But also go out and look at what schools are providing. So if you move to a new school, a new area, for example, one thing that we have new on our site is information about what districts are doing for remote learning and summer learning. So if you search on Great Schools search bar and you search for a specific district like San Diego Unified, and you go to that district page, you can see what the district is doing for planning for learning. And so if you know, then you can see kind of live teacher instruction. Are they going to be able to help kids with disabilities, for example? Are they providing devices? Are they providing connectivity? Start to think about, like, kind of in case schools aren't going to open in the way we would normally like them to open, what do I need to do to prepare my family and my child to be ready to start really learning well next year? I'll stop there.
That's fabulous information, Carrie. I hope everybody had their pens out and was writing things down. But if you didn't, we will provide those resources later on. And I think related to some of the things that you're talking about, if I could move over to Marcus now and just kind of ask Marcus from Edmonton, what are some of the solution sets that you see military connected school systems deploying across to address both the COVID related learning slide as well as some of the things that happened during the spring term?
Indeed, and thank you, Colonel. Welcome, everyone. The COVID-related learning loss has been it's been my only conversation, frankly, for the last 2 months in working with both school districts and with states who are seeking to address this as an emergency action. For example, State Superintendent Joanne Hoffmeister in Oklahoma just last week announced to her LEAs that she's deploying individualized learning capabilities to every single one of the students in public schools in Oklahoma as a way to address this learning loss at a skill level rather than simply in a content grade level. So using precision tools to get at this learning loss instead of trying to hand out worksheets to anyone and everyone that needs them. The uncertainty of our fall is weighing heavily on the minds of many of the school system partners that I will work with or have been working with. Let me give you an example. Fort Leavenworth, they have a 14-day quarantine period when families arrive on station. So no matter what, young people coming to that duty station will have 14 days minimum of virtual instruction because they will not be allowed to be in those buildings. And the superintendent there, who is frankly the leader of the Military Impacted Schools Association, he is now deploying capabilities to address all of that contingency option, that the 14-day quarantine, and then there's the what if come fall. So Fort Irwin, for example, they've already had families, Silver Valley, Jesse out there has done a fabulous job of overhauling his entire capabilities set because he's got families who have made it clear right from the start, we will not be back in buildings in the fall. So whether you as a school system are, or we as a family making a decision, we're not going to do that. And how as a LEA leader, do you deploy capabilities that addresses both the continuity of learning when you're in and out of buildings, and also making sure that it's precision and high quality to address what each individual learner needs at where they are. Those capabilities exist. They can be done at a precision level. We all don't go to the doctor and expect the doctor to come out to the waiting room and hand us a prescription for aspirin for all of us for our ailments. The tools now exist that educators and parents can give their learners precisely what they need.
Yeah, that is kind of highlights just some of the differences among the different school systems. And I actually was talking to the superintendent from Leavenworth yesterday and I asked him, so what advice would you give to military parents as they're moving into an area if they encounter something like a 14-day quarantine or other impediments to what would otherwise be kind of your typical enrollment period? And he said to just contact the district, the head office, and let them know what your situation is and be very specific with them. For example, we're arriving at this date, but my child won't be available for school because of a quarantine, for example, until whatever that date is in the future. And the more information that you can share with the school systems, then the better that they can inform you about how to get your child enrolled. I feel like I kind of skipped over like what happens when the military family is leaving an area. And Charisse, I think as the executive director of MIC3, you probably have some idea about what if a parent or what if a family is leaving and the school building is closed and they can't get their records before they leave. What should a family do in a case like that?
Well, in that case, I would definitely call the school. I mean, you know the school's closed, but I would call and see if there's information regarding how you can seek contacts or school records. We always advise families to request copies of unofficial records to hand carry to their next duty station. If the school is closed, I would definitely contact the district office. Usually there's someone somewhere that's open. And I know due to summer constraints or whatever, there may be some schools closed, but there's usually a record place that's available that can provide that documentation that you need. I know sometimes, especially in this case now where hard copies may not be prevalent, I know schools seem to be available to email those documents to parents more readily. But if you can get those records hand carry with you, that would be great. You folks have heard about it before, report cards, any kind of assessments. I keep all my child's report cards. Special GT program or involvement in school activities is very helpful. Anything to really help the new school really place that child correctly and well. And this includes documentation of, textbooks for high schoolers that they've used or curriculums. Again, any information, the communication with the schools can be very vital, I think, in the placement. I know that, for our compact, our compact does cover our school should be providing unofficial hand-carried records. It also has a clause in which the receiving school district can request and receive transcripts from the sending school within 10 working days. So that's a great thing about the compact, is that it may not address every single thing for your transfer, but vital things like this regarding hand-carried records availability and transfer those official records to ensure placement quickly is covered. So that's a great thing. I think what I think Carrie mentioned earlier is that this is a new normal, I think, for schools and for everyone. I think communication is vital. Marcus referred to it earlier. Communicating with the school what your needs are. If you have a special needs child or a special condition or special unique health issues, if you can pinpoint exactly where you're going to be living and going to school, which is always a challenge, that's very helpful. Communicating with that incoming school district is going to be very vital to ensuring the placement and identifying the supports that are available to you as a family, and also finding out what the school can provide to you specifically to help you in your situation. But like anything, everything's changing all the time. And so I think everyone, especially at the school level, is going to be flexible and understanding and mitigate the impact to your family the best they can. It may not be what it looked like before, but certainly I think as a community, we're going to work together to support the needs of all families, and especially for military kids.
Thank you, Cherise. Those are important points, and I think I would definitely refer parents to your website to see what points are covered and what specific challenges would be covered by the compact. But you brought up something really important that I want to get to with Michelle Norman, who's the Executive Director of Partners in Promise. And specifically, Michelle, thanks for being here today. We're talking about moving in the midst of COVID, in the midst of having these hybrid learning opportunities. And for a traditional or typical child, these are challenges. How's it going to affect those kids who are in the Exceptional Family Member Program and have special education needs?
Well, thank you, Becky, for having me today, and to Spencer and the CMSI panel for having this very important conversation. Because I want to make sure we acknowledge that all military families are really struggling with remote learning. But when you throw in the EFMP families, all of a sudden they are taking on an additional burden to a very stressful situation as it is. We talk about hats that we wear, and a hat for being a parent and a protector, because a lot of our students that are in the EFMP program are medically complex and have needs. So you're very worried about being exposed, and most of us probably have stopped, bringing in your ABA therapist or your respite provider just for fear for keeping your children safe. And then you're also a caregiver. I think it was Blue Star Families Pain Points Week 8, where only 20% of our caregiver respondents said they were receiving the resources that they needed to take care of their child or adult with special needs. And so you have all those hats. And also many of us are geo-batching based on our EFMP category. So now that burden has fallen upon the military spouse as the main caregiver. And now you've got the hats, the new hats of being a teacher, a psychologist, a therapist. I think as Pamela had mentioned earlier, we're not subject matter experts. And so no matter how you spin it, you can't truly replace that direct intervention and support that your child would get in a schoolhouse. And, I think during looking at those pain points, 34% of folks are worried about their IEP compliance. And then there's also a varied delivery of education, state to state, district to district. So there really isn't a cookie cutter way to approach, how to get back on track this fall. But there are some great silver linings I want to talk about. First of all, the U.S. Department of Education Secretary Betsy DeVos did tell the schools and stated that our children are still mandated to receive a free public education, which is FAPE. And that is defined in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So what does that require? Well, it's going to really require more communication. You know, we need to think about flexibility. We need to be looking at creativity and how we can still meet the needs and the individualized, services that our students need. In our wonderful schools, our military service organizations like MSAC and Boost Our Families and our legislators have all been working together on coming up with solutions on how we can help support them. And then there's another silver lining, which I want to bring up, is that finally parents, you're now seeing your child's strengths. You're now seeing your child's weaknesses. What has worked at home? What hasn't worked at home? You are now the most knowledgeable person that has overseen the delivery and given that delivery of this instruction. And that can be a huge asset when you do come to the table and advocate for your child's needs. So speaking of that, what's the best way forward to advocate for your child? For us, we really have been recommending document, document, document. How is your child performing before the pandemic started? How is your child performing at the end of the school year? Have you collected work samples of what's happened during the pandemic and other testing materials that were used for grading? You want to be as organized and have as much data collection as you can so that when you do get to an IEP meeting, you are prepared and you're able to partner with the schools and collaborate on to see if there's any services or supports that are needed after this pandemic and we get back into the schoolhouse. And we're here to help at Partners in Promise. We have a fantastic resource page at our website. We have a special education checklist that kind of goes, I'll just kind of show it to you. And it has some really good information about how to organize and what you need to think about as far as data collection goes. So you can track what the services are and kind of keep you, some of us haven't had those annual IEPs yet, meetings, or maybe have eligibility that's coming up, so it can kind of keep you on track. We have a great video on how to put together an IEP binder and what type of documents should be put in there. We also have a Facebook page where we're starting a PCS diaries and where we're following an EFMP family through a PCS and what are some of the things we need to consider. But the bottom line is that you are the best advocate for your child. And so be prepared and collaborate, partner with your school so that you can set your child up for success.
Oh, that's great, Michelle. And I'm glad that you've got those resources on your website. I mean, that's one thing that MSEC recommends all the time is whether you have a child who has special needs or not, document, 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 and start like a portfolio or a binder for your child that you think of it as a resume that shows everything that they've been through and representation of different types of work they've done, that sort of thing. I think those are all good tips. I wanted to kind of switch back to Patty Ewan for a second because when you mentioned Betsy DeVos, that made me think, has there been federal funding or guidance for schools to help them support distance learning in this environment?
Yes, there has quite a bit actually. Okay, good. Thanks. Thank you. Yes, the CARES Act was passed on March 27th, and it provides an enormous amount of funding. The way that it works is, let me just simplify this for a second. The way that it works is all of the states have applied for waivers, and the secretary was given authority to expedite the waivers. That's done. All of your summative assessments for all of the states for school year 19 and 20 have been sunsetted during unprecedented events. Then the states filed their plans and their ideas. All of those went through an approval process in April and May. Almost all of those have been approved now, and now the state guidance is coming down to the local education agencies. The local education agencies are now going to be working to meet the state criteria, and they will follow their plans for what happens next. And we're sort of thinking about it in three big chunks. summer learning, restarting the school year, and then reopening, because it's quite possible we may restart the year and not reopen, or reopen and then move to distance learning to restart. So in the chunk of money that every state gets, about 10% goes to the governor, about 43% goes to the state education agency to go directly to the local education agencies, and the remaining amount goes to institutes of higher education, because they also have a huge crisis. For those of you who are on the call who have seniors, know what your seniors are thinking about, whether or not they're going to be freshmen and where they're going to be freshmen. So there's a need there as well, even though this is a K-12 seminar. And then that's how it will flow. That's the big idea of what's happening. Okay. Can I just make a comment to what all the panelists have said before that I think might be helpful to some parents? Thank you. School buildings are closed, but schools are open and operating, and people are working as hard as they can to the best of their ability. And in that context, here at DODEA, through the grant program where we have 235 active grants in 35 states, our own schools, special arrangements, we have been able to verify that all of the school systems that we work directly with that are highly military impacted are able to enroll students just as they always have. And they are able to send students off with the proper records just as they always have. And they recognize how important this is. It kind of gives me goosebumps, but we've had personal conversations, and they are aware and addressing and prepared. And military connected families, students come and leave school every single day. This is what we do. And there's a lot of people that really care. So let that worry. I know there will be problems, and the partnership division will help you, but most will go well.
Yeah, thanks, Patty. I think that's a good perspective to have, and something to keep in mind is that everybody's working so hard to make this a smooth transition for lots of military kids. And I was about to say, Spencer, do you have any questions from the chat box that we might want to listen to or hear?
I thought you might have been about to ask that. In fact, we do. And thank you all for submitting what has turned into a long list of questions, which have also come in with a lot of thanks and excitement about the resources that have already been talked about to our speakers and panelists. So in the 7 minutes that we have left, excuse me, I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of these questions. I'd like to harken back to what I said at the start. We will make sure that in your post-event email, we will follow up on all of these questions in addition to all the resources that we've already promised. But we've had questions around and some anxiety around Carrie earlier on mentioned the summer slide, which would have existed this summer, last summer, next summer for all families and all children. We've got the COVID slide, which again, many of us are going to be dealing with this summer. But even within the COVID slide, there's some anxieties and questions that we've had coming in around, well, my school, I'm at a remote duty location. I'm not at a school that is probably as good as the ones around the major installation that I might be moving towards. And my child hasn't been doing the remote learning nearly as much as other children have. So with those in mind and addressing that anxiety about how your child's experience over the last 3 months might have been even different within and put them up for even a bigger COVID slide, are there thoughts around how to tackle that over the summer in terms of summer learning expectations? And what, quite honestly, this was another question, what's a good expectation for how much time you spend with your kids to combat not only the summer slide, but also the COVID slide and maybe the COVID slide plus? So I'll tee that up to maybe Becky, you first, or others.
Yeah, thanks, Spencer. And I think that that maybe what parents are concerned about is just significant gaps in learning. And I know that that Pam has some thoughts on that. And so I'd like to ask Pam from tutor.com to respond if parents have those kinds of concerns about gaps in learning, what can they do?
Sure, parents always have these concerns, right? I'm a parent myself, and in a sort of a regular year, we all have these concerns, but they are in fact highlighted by the current situation and the unfinished learning, and everyone is doing things a little bit different. We work with school districts all over the country as partners, and one school district may have closed entirely. They just decided to close their doors, and another may have been providing packets, and another may have switched entirely to online learning. So the added concern, especially if you're PCSing, is, I didn't get something that another school district might have. These gaps, as Patty pointed out, every school and every educator is accustomed to dealing with students who start a school year at different levels. Everyone is in the same boat. Every parent, every student, every school and educator knows that it's been an unusual spring. It may very well be an unusual fall. And so everyone will adjust. For parents who want to explore what gaps specifically their child might have, I think someone has already mentioned today on the panel, district websites have curriculum. They have their standards on their websites. They can certainly go and look for the current school year, the school year that just ended, to see what they can identify that they may need help with. But I would say there is so much stress and anxiety because the unknown brings that, right? But military families are especially good at finding resources. They're especially good at being resilient and switching to plan B when plan A didn't work, or plan C when plan B didn't work, right? So I would just remind folks that everyone's in the same boat. Educators are going to recognize that students are coming to them perhaps at a different level than they might have been had the school year ended normally. But if parents are interested in exploring how to build their student skills over the summer, there are lots of online resources. Many of them have been mentioned on this call. Certainly at tutor.com, we also have those resources, and we provide the human beings to help with those. We have practice tests, but also just to alleviate the stress, right? And to provide some reassurance that everyone recognizes it's unusual and everyone is working together, and the schools are open and they're making plans to address all sorts of different possibilities.
Thanks, Pam. Spencer, over to you.
Thanks so much, Becky. And first, I'd like to deliver a special thanks to you and your team at MSAC for all of the great work that you did to pull this panel together and bring this great body of speakers to provide these insights and resources. And then I'd like to again thank our speakers for everything that they have done, are doing, and will do to address the challenges in education that have arisen as a result of this pandemic. So thanks for being with us today. I would like to remind everyone to please check your email after this event is over. You'll be receiving follow-up information that we've already promised. And also a post-webinar survey. We very much take into consideration your thoughts on where we take these events in the future. So please do not hesitate to give us all forms of feedback on your experience with us today. We'd love to capture your feedback. And we're also in that email, you also receive a link to another study that we're doing, the Resilience Under Stress study, and would love your feedback on that as well. Finally, I'd like to invite you to our next virtual event, which will be next week, Thursday, June 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That event will be titled, or is titled, Strategies for Managing Your Career and Family. And we're excited to host a similarly terrific group of speakers, including Mrs. Ellen Dunford, Major General Tammy Smith from the Army, several individuals who can come and talk about strategies for managing your own career, both on the service member side as well as the military family and spouse side. And how do you think about yourself as a family unit for the next 12 or 18 months, and what are some of the decisions that you should make or could make as you consider that? In the meantime, please be sure to check out our website, which is full of resources for you, your family, and your business during this time. And thanks again for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you on a future town hall. Bye-bye.